Upon graduating from university, too many years ago, my closest friend and I were contemplating what to do next. We had a few years of entrepreneurship under our belt, building both social and for-profit businesses, and we were looking for our next exciting opportunity. Spending many nights learning about fast-growing markets in 2006, a weird piece of data caught our eyes. The fastest-growing mobile phones market in the world was Africa. As many of you were not yet born, let me just mention that the mobile phones revolution started about a decade earlier. I'm talking about the pre-iPhone era. We actually had keypads on them. And learning more about this opportunity, we decided to embark on the most logical thing to do for two mid-20s Israeli fresh grads and launch our very own mobile internet service provider in Africa. Nothing prepared us for the first time we landed in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, a few months later. We were greeted with a buzzing metropolitan energy, packed streets, and a young population. Really young. I'll get back to it later. While the slowest internet connection still costs roughly $300 per month, many people were using mobile phones. Interestingly, they weren't just using them to call or to text, they were actually using them to pay. In fact, the first and most successful mobile payment service in the world started in Kenya. Now, don't get me wrong. We were also met by a lot of what we were expecting. Poverty, broken infrastructure, messy streets, gigantic slums. But despite that, I fell in love. My Africa story was just beginning. It's now been 18 years since I embarked on this journey. While our first company failed miserably together with the rest of the global economy post the financial crisis in 2008, when we had to shut down a year later, I became even more keen to keep exploring this special opportunity. My intuition was it is really big. Now let me break away from my story for a minute and share some of my learnings. First, it's a really big continent. Do you know that only in recent years they've started fixing the world's map to the right proportions of Africa? If you wanted, you could fit in Africa, the US, China, India, Japan, all of East Europe, and most of its west, including the UK, Spain, France, and Germany, and still be left with quite a lot of space. Now, Africa is not a country. It's a collection of very diverse 54 countries and many more cultures. Despite what you think, majority of Africans own a mobile phone. Sadly, with that, many of them have no access to almost anything else. While more than half of the mobile phone owners actually own a smartphone, less than half of Africans have access to energy. 6 in 10 adults have no access to a bank account, and only 3% of population have access to health insurance. And it doesn't end there. The doctors to patients ratio is about 20 times lower than what it is here. The teachers to students ratio is roughly about half. Now, one thing is to understand Africa, but another thing is to understand Africa in the context of the wider world. In recent years, many countries are seeing their population starting to shrink. Some of the world's largest economies, including China, Japan, and Europe, to name a few, are not having enough young people joining the workforce every year. With decreasing productivity, economic growth is becoming a real challenge. So where might we find the solution? You're guessing right. Africa's population grew from 800 million people in the year 2000 to over 1.4 billion people today. It is expected to add another 1 billion people in the next 20 or so years. And it's not just big, it's young, the youngest in the world. With a median age of 18, it is 10 years younger than India's and 25 years younger than Europe's. By the year 2035, 1 of 2 people joining the global workforce will come from Africa. Let it sink. 50% of the new joiners to the global workforce will be African. Now, if you're managing the Western economy, looking for the next source of economic growth, you're looking for a young population, connected to technology, with a high potential of productivity increase. Do you see where I'm going? Back to my story. I spent the last 2 decades working in technology in Africa. In the past few years, I've started together with my partners one of the first and largest venture capital funds in the continent. We're backing African founders who are taking head-on some of the largest challenges leveraging technology. Now, in order to unlock its potential, Africa needs to jump many hurdles. It needs better infrastructure, better health services, better education, and better connectivity, just to name a few. And this is where opportunity lies. We had the privilege of investing in Nigeria's first online university. Taking care of the higher education gap, they're now offering online places for millions of Africans who couldn't find a physical university place. We also had the luck in investing in the fastest growing digital bank in West Africa, connecting the unconnected and offering loans for the first time for millions of Africans and small business owners, all done in seconds over their mobile phones. The opportunities are endless. The world will need Africa. We will all need Africa to thrive and drive our future economic growth. So what is my ask? Fall in love with Africa, but not for the romantic charity reasons. Fall in love in the opportunity it offers, in its incredible people, and more so in being one of the only sources of future global hope. Thank you.